Miss Smith.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in today. Our conference today is going to be a little bit different than usual. We're going to be focusing on Jane's national achievement results that we got back this year. First though, I would like to say that Jane is doing very well in her social development since we met last. She's made a lot of friends and become more confident in herself. I might also mention that her work performance has been getting better as well. I have a portfolio here that we'll be referring to throughout this meeting that'll show you different items of what she's working on in class as well as comparing it to the test results.
Okay, great. But what is this National Achievement Test and when did she take it?
Great question, and here's a copy for you. It's called the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, and Jane, as well as the rest of her classmates, took this February 1st. Don't worry, this test was given to all 4th graders in San Antonio. Basically, the National Achievement Test shows that what Jane has learned over the past year. They do this by comparing our student scores to what we call a norm group and national standards or criterion. If you look at the test, you can see that it's divided into 2 parts, the top part and the bottom part. The top is the norm reference and the bottom is the national standards or criterion reference.
Okay, but wait, what is a norm group?
Great question. We'll go ahead and start off with that since you asked. The norm group is a group of students that are given this test prior to our students taking the test. It's basically a comparison group. For this test, the norm group was 2,000 students all across the country that have similar economic, ethnicity, age, gender, and language demographics, such as here in San Antonio. As you see, the norm reference section is divided up into subjects, such as reading, language, math, social studies, and science. These subjects are then divided into subtests. For example, the reading portion is divided into vocabulary and reading comprehension. Language has spelling, capitalization, punctuation, and usage and expression. Do you see what I'm talking about? Do you have any questions?
Yes, I see what you're talking about, but I do have a question. What are the core total and the composite that I see in bold next to subjects in the top portion?
Great question. The core total focuses on the basic skills. Means that other students at that grade level answered the questions exactly how Jane did. Next is the National Stay 9. Basically, it's a score of 1 through 9 that shows where your student falls on a bell curve, which I have here, and we'll talk about that later. Next is the National Percentage Score. Now, this is not a percent that the student scored, it's a percentage higher or lower than what the norm group is tested at. Now, I know this is a lot of information, so feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. Are you okay right now?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, then if you look right to the next of the score we just talked about, it also shows these results in a band format. That's just for a better visual. The shaded area of the bands basically show the spread of percentile that the test graders believe that Jane should score between if she took it multiple times. The white dot you see is what she actually scored on this particular test.
Okay, well, how did Jane do in vocabulary?
Okay, well, let's look at these test results regarding the vocabulary. If you look at the results, you can see she made a 210 on her standard score. If you look at this bell curve right here, I've written in the standard scores range. For 4th grade, it's 183 to 210, with the average being 200. As you can see, this means Jane is above average for vocabulary. The next score you see is the GE, or grade equivalent. Jane received a 5.5 on her GE. This implies that Jane scored what a 5th grader would in their 5th month. Now again, that doesn't mean she should move to the 5th grade, it just means 5th graders answered these questions exactly how Jane did. The next score you see is the NS, or National Stay 9. Jane scored a 6 for vocabulary. This means, again, if we look at the bell curve, that on a scale of 1 through 9, with the average being 5, Jane is above average in vocabulary according to the National Stay 9. The last row of scores that you see there is labeled NPR, or National Percentile Rank. Jane scored a 75 in vocabulary.
Wait, a 75 in vocabulary? You just told me she was above average in vocabulary with the other score systems. How is this possible?
Don't worry, let me explain. This is not a percentage, it's a percentile. If you look at the bell curve right here, once again, I will show you how a percentile differs from a percentage. You can see here that the percentile starts from 1 and goes to 99 with an average of 50. Jean scored a 75, and the average student her age scored a 50, so she is above average in vocabulary.
Okay, thank you. I really understand this norm reference group now. Thank you so much for clarifying that for me. However, I do remember you mentioning something about a criterion reference group at the bottom portion of this test. What is that?
Yes, let's go ahead and go over that. The criterion scores right at the bottom give information on how Jane performed on specific standards or objectives. As you can see, it's also broken into different items. The first column is the total number of questions asked on the exam. The second column is how many questions Jane actually attempted to answer. You'll then move to the third column and you'll notice a %CSTU. This is referring to the percentage of questions that this grade level they believe she should get correct within the nation. Over to the right, you can see the label rank. That has a horizontal bar graph underneath it. The shaded part of the bar graph basically shows you the spread of answers that the test graders believe Jane would score if she took this test multiple times. The black bar right there indicates what Jane ranked at this time. On that note, would you look down and see if there's any subtest areas that you don't understand?
Yes, actually, I am curious about the scores from her names, organizations, and groups subtest. It looks like she scored a 0. I don't know why you didn't tell me she was having trouble in this area.
Don't worry. She's actually not having trouble in this area. I have her portfolio here and I can show you she's doing well in this subject. Unfortunately, when this test was given, we hadn't gone over this content yet, and that's why she scored a 0. Therefore, if she retook this test right now, she would definitely be doing much better, as you can see from her portfolio work.
Okay, thank you. It makes much more sense.
Great. Are there any other subtests you wanted to review?
No, actually, I think that was it.
Okay. Well, there are a few areas that I'd actually like to talk about. First, let's talk about the results for organization of ideas. Jane scored 100% in this area, and I'm thoroughly impressed with these results. I truly believe that this score reflects her work in class. Let me show you some more work from this topic. As you can see, the assignment that I have here was for her to write an outline about clouds. She created this organized chart that vividly expresses all of her ideas on paper. This score was well deserved. The next subtest I want to talk about is the words with affixes. Jane scored a 17% in this area. This is something that she's also having trouble with in class. As you can see here, with this activity we did, she seemed to not fully understand what the difference was between a prefix and a suffix.
Well, what can I do to help her understand?
This is something that's easily fixed, and we can work on this with her during class as well as you at home with her. There are many online activities that you can do with her or that she could do independently. You can also play word games with her to help her find either the prefix or suffix of the word. I'll be giving you a handout later on, which will have different ideas and references that you can use in regards to that. It also has many activities that you can use that she's doing well in the subject areas right now, but that will just reinforce her skills. Lastly, I want to talk about the scores in history. Jane scored 100%. This is really great and I'm very proud of her work. It also reflects her classwork. As you can see here, this is one example. She always seems to get a 95% on all assignments or higher. Do you have any other questions?
No, I think you covered it all. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, let me give you this handout that I have. Reviews the explanations and the scores of what we talked about today on the test, as well as it has those online activities and at-home activities that you can work on with Jane in her struggling areas and to reinforce what she's doing well at. I want to thank you so much for meeting with me today. If you have any questions, feel free. At the bottom of the handout is my email address and phone number. You're more than welcome to contact me if you need to.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great day.